What if I told you the most humiliating defeat in British military history didn't come from Napoleon, the Germans, or any European power, but from an African warrior nation armed with nothing but spears and strategy? In just one day, thousands of British soldiers were crushed by an army they dismissed as primitive. This is no legend. It is the untold story of the Zulu war genius, so fierce it rewrote the rules of combat. And what was unleashed on that battlefield left the mighty British Empire shocked, shamed, and scrambling to cover it up. They tried to bury this history, but today we're digging it up. In 1787, a child was born in the rolling hills of southern Africa, an outcast at birth, a warlord by fate, and the man who would one day redefine the very nature of war. His name, Shaka. The child came to the world as an illegitimate son of Zulu chief Senzangahona and Nandi, daughter of a Langeni chief. His existence was condemned before he could even speak. In those days, a child born from parents of different clans was considered taboo, a sin against tribal tradition. The pressure from tribal elders forced Senzangahona to reject both mother and child, casting them out from the protection of the Zulu clan. Exiled and vulnerable, Shaka and his mother found no sanctuary with the Langeni people. The young boy faced constant torment from other children and adults alike who mocked his illegitimacy. Where others might have crumbled, Shaka's spirit hardened. Each insult became fuel for his determination to rise above his circumstances. These harsh lessons formed the foundation of his character, creating a man who understood that power meant survival and weakness invited abuse. It was in this crucible of pain that Shaka's revolutionary ideas were born. Years later, Nandi found refuge with the powerful Mafethwa clan, ruled by Chief Dingiswayo. It was here, under the shadow of seasoned warriors, that Shaka found his purpose. Dingiswayo recognized something special in the young man, an unusual combination of physical prowess, tactical thinking, and fierce determination. During military exercises, the clash of spears and thudding of shields filled the air as warriors tested their skills. While others collapsed from exhaustion, Shaka kept training, pushing, evolving. He gripped his cowhide shield with bleeding hands and charged with a fury that left veteran fighters stunned. Dingiswayo saw it immediately. This young man wasn't ordinary. He had the eyes of a predator and the mind of a tactician. When other warriors followed orders, Shaka questioned them. He studied every movement on the battlefield, not just to obey, but to outthink. Back then, Southern African warfare was more ceremonial than savage. Warriors stood apart, hurling long spears from a distance. Battles often ended with minimal bloodshed and no clear winner. But Shaka, an outsider with nothing to lose, saw weakness in that tradition. He envisioned something more ruthless, more efficient, up close, unrelenting. Designed to break an enemy, then came 1816. Shaka's father died, and the throne passed to his half-brother Sigujana. But Shaka wasn't content with waiting. Backed by Dingiswayo, he launched a swift and brutal attack, eliminating Sigujana and seizing control of the Zulu clan by force. It was the first move of many that would define his reign, precise, cold, and undeniable. The boy who had once been cast out now returned as king, with no attachment to tradition or respect for warfare conventions. His outsider status freed him to question everything and rebuild Zulu military tactics from scratch. Shaka was forged in hardship, a king born to conquer. Now sitting on the Zulu throne, Shaka began military reforms that would transform his small clan into a powerhouse. Within a decade, the Zulu would dominate southern Africa. The rejected child had become a feared leader, reshaping African warfare through innovations so effective they would eventually challenge the greatest empire on earth. When Shaka became king, he didn't inherit an army. He built one, the old ways of war, distant spear throwing, and ceremonial posturing were dead to him. Shaka had clawed his way from exile to power through force, precision, and fear. Now, he would mold the Zulu into a war machine so ruthless, so disciplined, that no enemy would stand in their path. His first innovation was deadly in its simplicity, a weapon built not for show, but for slaughter. The iklwa, a short stabbing spear with a wide, sword-like blade that turned every warrior into a close-range killer. Its name came from the sound it made when yanked from a man's chest. Shaka paired it with an upgraded cowhide shield, broader and thicker than before, designed not only to block attacks, but to trap, hook, and disarm the enemy. These tools, used in unison, replaced ritual with raw brutality. But Shaka didn't stop at weapons. He reprogrammed the very structure of the battlefield. This integrated weapons system transformed combat from distant exchanges into what European observers documented as a deadly dance, where Zulu warriors methodically closed with their enemies in an unstoppable symphony of coordinated violence. He introduced the legendary Buffalo Horns formation that embodied his tactical genius. This three-part formation featured veteran warriors forming the chest to engage enemies directly, while younger troops formed the horns on both flanks, swiftly encircling opponents, cutting off escape. Behind them, the loins wait in reserve, ready to reinforce each flank and finish off the enemy. It wasn't chaos, it was choreography. To the British, it was unthinkable that a tribal force could move with such precision. Captain Gardner, a seasoned British officer, would later admit their discipline and order could scarcely be exceeded by any European troops. That level of control didn't come easy. Shaka trained his warriors with merciless intensity. They ran barefoot across thorns, hardened their feet on hot rock, and fought mock battles with live weapons. Cowards were exiled. Failure meant punishment, or worse, every regiment moved as one, fought as one, killed as one. Within just a decade, the Zulu army had evolved from a local defense force into a juggernaut, swift, disciplined, and utterly devastating. The Buffalo Horns formation crushed every tribe that stood in its way. Kingdoms collapsed. Warriors who once mocked the name Shaka now whispered it with fear. His military revolution didn't just dominate, it redefined African warfare. But this unstoppable force was about to face its greatest test, because on the horizon marched the most powerful army on earth, armed with rifles, cannons, and imperial arrogance. The British Empire was coming, and the Zulu were ready. January 22nd, 1879. The jagged silhouette of Isandana Hill pierced the South African horizon under a ghostly sky. A partial solar eclipse dimmed the sun, casting long shadows across the British encampment below. There, 1,300 red-coated soldiers stood confident, armed not just with rifles and artillery, but with the arrogance of empire. Their commander, Lord Chelmsford, had made a fatal decision. Believing the main Zulu army lay elsewhere, he took 2,800 men to hunt them down, leaving the camp exposed, poorly fortified, and dangerously overconfident. The British would pay dearly for this mistake. They hadn't dug trenches, they hadn't formed a laager. Worse still, their ammunition was locked in crates, sealed with copper bands, requiring screwdrivers to open. But the most fatal error, they had underestimated their enemy. Lurking silently in the valleys and gullies near the camp, 20,000 Zulu warriors waited under the command of Netshingweyo, Komahol, and Mvumengwana. Though Shaka Zulu had been dead for over 50 years, his military machine still breathed, his tactics still lived. His weapons, the iklwa, the cowhide shield, remained in every warrior's grip. The discipline he forged had not faded, it had evolved. And now, under a darkened sun, it was ready to strike. The British spotted movement too late. A tidal wave of black shields and gleaming spears erupted from the landscape as the Zulu chest stormed the front lines. Gunfire ripped through the air. The Martini Henry rifles barked in disciplined volleys, tearing down hundreds. But the Zulus did not break. While the chest held firm, the left and right horns of the formation swept outward, one curling behind Isandana Hill, the other cutting off retreat. Shaka's bullhorn formation, reborn in full, began to squeeze the life out of the British position. Inside the camp, quartermasters scrambled to open ammunition crates. Chaos reigned. Gunfire slowed. Zulu warriors closed the distance. Then came the moment the rifles went silent. Bayonets met iklwas. The battle devolved into hand-to-hand carnage. British lines collapsed as the encirclement closed. Soldiers were pulled down, surrounded, and cut to pieces. Officers fought with pistols and swords. Some tried to flee, but there was nowhere to run. When the dust finally settled, over 1,300 British soldiers lay dead. Only a handful escaped. Rifles, cannons, and British flags were captured. The regimental colors, symbols of imperial pride, were taken by the very warriors the empire had called savages. It was the worst colonial defeat in British history. An official report later admitted the primary cause of defeat was the underestimation of the offensive power of the Zulu army. They had dismissed Zulu tactics as primitive. Instead, they were outmaneuvered by the ghost of a long-dead genius. Isandlwana wasn't just a battle, it was a reckoning. A thunderous reminder that the weapons of empire mean nothing when wielded without respect. But while Shaka's tactics had earned their greatest victory, the kingdom he built stood on the edge of a storm. The empire would not take humiliation lying down. The Zulu had bloodied the lion. Now the lion was coming back. The victory at Isandlwana sent shockwaves through the British Empire. An African army has shattered the myth of European invincibility. But the man who made it possible would never hear the cheers. Shaka Zulu, the man whose tactics humbled a global superpower, had been dead for over 50 years before the British set foot on Zulu land. And his end came not in battle, but through betrayal, grief, and a descent into madness. It began in October of 1827 with the death of the only person Shaka truly trusted, his mother, Nandi. She had stood by him during the years of exile, humiliation, and hunger. She was more than a mother, she was his foundation, and when she died, that foundation shattered. Grief turned to madness. In the months that followed, Shaka unleashed a wave of mourning so extreme it became tyranny. He banned crop planting for an entire year. Milk, a vital staple, was outlawed. He ordered mass executions, declaring that anyone who failed to grieve with sufficient intensity did not deserve to live. Pregnant women were slaughtered. Entire families vanished. No joy was permitted while the king suffered. As famine spread and villages emptied, fear replaced loyalty. The very warriors Shaka had forged into Africa's most feared army now found themselves carrying out executions on their own people for crimes as simple as a misplaced tear. Inside his royal court, whispers grew louder. Shaka's once loyal generals watched in silence as he descended into paranoia, and among them, his own brothers, Dingane and Malangena, began to plot. On September 22, 1828, their plan came to life. As Shaka stood among his own, the brothers approached with calm faces and hidden weapons. And in a flash of steel, the man who had once conquered southern Africa with nothing but spears and strategy was dead. As he bled on the floor of his royal kraal, Shaka looked up and reportedly asked, "Children of my father, what is wrong?" There was no answer. Dingane seized the throne that very day. His first act as king, a purge. Friends, family, advisors, hoes, anyone connected to Shaka was wiped out. The kingdom, once united by discipline, was now fractured by blood. Shaka's military machine lived on, but its core had cracked. Internal rivalries grew, and outside those borders, European colonialism crept closer with every passing year. Still, in 1879, that machine would rise one final time, and at Isandlwana, it would do the unthinkable, bringing down the pride of the British Empire. It was the ultimate vindication of Shaka's genius. Humiliated, the British assembled a second invasion force, this time with greater firepower, more men, and hardened resolve. London wanted vengeance, and they would stop at nothing to break the Zulu Kingdom once and for all. It ended in the Battle of Ulundi, where Zulu resistance was finally broken. By 1887, the once mighty kingdom had been absorbed into the British colony of Natal. But even in defeat, the Zulus had done what no other African force had done before. They proved that discipline, strategy, and unity could humble even the greatest empire on earth. Shaka Zulu remains one of the most complex and awe-inspiring figures in African history, a man forged by pain who turned trauma into innovation. His buffalo horns formation is still studied by modern military institutions. His focus on close-quarters combat, psychological warfare, and rigorous training reshaped warfare not just in Africa, but globally. And at Isandlwana, his vision reached its peak, a technologically inferior army defeating a modern European force. Strategy beating firepower, legacy overcoming time. But like many visionaries, his genius came at a cost. The same mind that revolutionized combat also brought terror to his people. His brilliance forged an empire. His grief helped destroy it. Shaka's legacy is not simple. He was not a hero, not a villain. He was something rarer, a force of nature. Tell us what you think in the comments. Was Shaka's legacy one of glory, tragedy, or both? Let us know which great African empire you would like us to uncover next. If you've enjoyed this story, please like, comments, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another tale of Africa's magnificent past. This is Histories Africa, where the forgotten power of the continent lives again.